Welcome to Therapy Explained, where we explain, demystify, and destigmatize mental health and mental health treatment. My name is Deniss. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and your very own mental health cheerleader. Today, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome and its red flags. And before we jump into it though, I'm going to pause for a moment of context. What I mean by contextualizing ourselves is taking a look at all of our identities. Imposter syndrome is, a syndrome. It's an incorrect belief that we are somehow imposters to something. And this usually comes up for minorities, that is women, people of color, etc., when we are in a space that is, to be honest, white dominated and or corporate. So particularly at work, we tend to feel like we don't belong, despite the fact that we probably have earned our positions or job titles or spaces of power. And that's because we're not used to being in these spaces. There really is no representation for these spaces, and a lot of these spaces were not built for us. I talk a little bit more about this in my imposter syndrome video and what it is, so go ahead and check that video out if you want a little bit more context before diving into today's video. But I think it's important that we touch base on this first. By no means am I saying that you need to assimilate into white culture or assimilate into corporate culture. Actually, what I would like for you to do as you watch this video and even the other video on imposter syndrome is remember that the reason that you're feeling these things, the reason that you're feeling like an imposter, is because of all of your identities. So ask yourself, how does being a woman of color, or a person of color affect the way that I'm experiencing people around me or life around me? This feeling of imposter, where is it really coming from? And that's why contextualizing ourselves is so important. So make sure to keep that in mind as we dive deep into these red flags of imposter syndrome. Number one, fear. If you find that you're constantly afraid of what other people might think or say about you, your project, your work, the way that you present yourself, that's usually because you're feeling like an imposter. You're afraid that it might not be good enough, that you will be judged to maybe not be as smart as you had presented yourself to be, or as capable as you had presented yourself to be. So if you're experiencing some fear, take a look at this. Where is this coming from? What am I afraid of? Number two is guilt. We tend to feel like imposters when we are trying to set boundaries at work, and we feel guilty. We'll feel guilty because we're saying no, or because we might be logging out earlier, or because just in general we're starting to speak up for ourselves a lot more. And we feel bad because we're afraid that this might look bad, that this somehow will communicate to people around us that they're not important to us, that this job is not important to us, or a project. But that's not really what's happening. Remember that a lot of this guilt is coming up from messages and incorrect messages about what you should be doing or what a professional should be. And when you're setting these boundaries, what you're doing is advocating for yourself and your needs as a human being, which are your basic rights. So if you're experiencing some guilt about trying to take some time off, leaving work at the right time that you're supposed to, look at this. It's possible that you might be experiencing imposter syndrome. And just like I said with the last point, make sure that you're asking yourself, where is this coming from? What are the thoughts connected to this? Number three is self-doubt. Self-doubt is super common with imposter syndrome. So if you feel like you are not good enough, your work is not good enough, constantly doubting your decisions, the things that you're saying, how you're saying them, whether at work or in your personal life, you might be experiencing some imposter syndrome. And as always, try to contextualize yourself. How does my identity affect the way that I am feeling about this particular job, task, or message that I'm trying to send? And is it really valid? Is it because of the stories that I've been told about who I'm supposed to be that I am actually not being those things, and now I'm doubting who I really am because I'm not the cookie cutter version of what everyone else is telling me I'm supposed to be? Is that where this is coming from? And And if it is, challenge it. And if you want more coping skills on what exactly to do, then make sure that you check out my other video on imposter syndrome and how to manage it. Number 4 is procrastination. This is extremely common. So, as you probably might have guessed, if you are experiencing some self-doubt and you're questioning a lot of what you're putting out there, then you're probably also going to push things off to the last minute because they're causing you so much anxiety. They're causing you so much fear about what other people might think or what other people might feel or say about you or the work that you're putting out. So it's easier to hold off on projects and tasks. It's easier not to do it for as long as we possibly can so that we don't actually have to put ourselves out there. So if you're procrastinating, it's possible that you might be experiencing imposter syndrome, and just as we did with the other points, it's important to ask ourselves where it's coming from and challenging them directly and reminding yourself that you are absolutely capable and that you can do this. I also have a video on procrastination and other things that might be coming up for you and affecting how much you're procrastinating. So if you're looking for more information on that and some coping skills, make sure to check that video out. But one thing that can usually be helpful with procrastination is to break things down into little, more manageable tasks so that it doesn't feel like you have one big project to do. And number 5, difficulty sleeping. As with every mental health stress that we're going through, it's not just our thoughts, it's not just in our head. Our whole body is feeling it. So if you are experiencing imposter syndrome, it's also possible that you might be having trouble sleeping. That might be falling asleep or staying asleep or getting enough sleep. Even if you're sleeping for 8 or 7 hours, then you're probably still going to feel sleepy, and that's because of the guilt and the fear and the anxiety and the procrastination. All of that is keeping your brain so busy that it cannot relax. Something that's really helpful for this area is having a routine, and I've already talked about why you need a routine, so if you want more information on that, make sure to check out that video. So it is really helpful for you to develop a way to relax your body and transition into sleep, which is why I'm such a big fan of routines. Helping your body stop thinking about all these negative things can be helpful. And that's why it's important to, again, contextualize ourselves and challenge these thoughts. Because the less that we engage with them, the less that we feed into them, the smaller they will feel and the more in control we will feel when this does come up for us. So this is absolutely not a comprehensive list of red flags for imposter syndrome, but these are the most common that I see. So if you were wondering if this is what was going on for you, or if you knew that this is what was happening but didn't really know how to exactly break it down for yourself, I hope that this video was helpful. Remember that the purpose of today's video is not to tell you, hey, here's what's wrong with you, and let you go, but instead to provide you with the vocabulary so that you can understand what's going on. Is this imposter syndrome? Is that what's happening for me? And also to encourage you to question it. Again, remember, it's an imposter syndrome. It's not true. It's not what's actually happening. Ask yourself, what am I feeling an imposter to? Where is this coming from? And most of the time, this is because, again, of stories that you were told about who someone like you is allowed to be. Most of the time, as women of color, people of color, immigrants, we're not told that we can have it all, right? That we can be very rich and professional and just so successful and so smart. Like, that's not what's told to us. We have these really limited stories about who we're allowed to be and who we're expected to be. And the moment that we step outside of that, we get pushback. So remember, a lack of representation, sexism, racism, any isms might be affecting the way that you feel about yourself and the way you're experiencing the world. And those things are probably the ones that are sending you the distorted and incorrect message that you are an imposter. So don't believe them. Contextualize yourself. If you have one of these red flags, identified some of these red flags, make sure to challenge and address them. If you want more help on how to process and challenge the imposter syndrome. A worksheet for reflections and helpful questions is available on the website for you to purchase for just $1. But if you're signed up for the newsletter, that's already in your inbox for free, so make sure to check that out. If you're not already signed up for the newsletter, make sure that you do. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Before you leave, make sure that you go to Instagram to get your cheat sheet on today's video. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, if you found it helpful, which I hope that you did. And make sure that you're subscribed to this channel for all things mental health. Thanks so much for watching, and remember, as always, I'm cheering for you.